How's everybody doing today? Good to see the community show up. Today is a really exciting day for us. Over the past 3 years, our whole vision was to bring in companies to build on Constellation, be an ecosystem play, much like Ethereum, much like Polkadot is. And we've taken a different path to that ecosystem play. We've got a live mainnet, we've got foundational nodes running, we're getting ready to deploy Node 2.0 this year, we've got Lattice Exchange as our financial hub, but what are the companies that are building on us? And that was something that we set out last year to think about what would be the instrumental companies that would build on us. And you know what's remarkable about today, and we're going to be introducing one of the first few projects that are building on the hypergraph, that it's not just a project. And one thing I really want to plant a seed in everybody's mind is, how do we actually take entire industries and shift it onto a blockchain? I'm not just talking about plug and play a piece of blockchain that tracks supply chain management. That shit is boring. I never really saw that being transformative to an entire industry. And so when you think about the next phase of entrepreneurs and using a framework, a blockchain framework to build the next iteration of a business, the first thing I think of is digital advertising. Because digital advertising is one of those industries that's set up like a crypto exchange, where there's buying and selling of media. There are similar actors, there's similar components that are that make up this industry. And a little background on myself before I introduce these gentlemen that will be talking for the remainder of the time, is that about 15 years ago, I got started in the digital advertising space, and I worked for a company that was a rocket ship in San Francisco, and they really kind of built out real-time bidding. It's called RTB, but real-time bidding at scale, and we're one of the founding companies that did that. And I personally saw how broken the industry was. I went to go build an ad tech company. I sold it in 2015. I literally hate the industry with a passion. And I got on the call with these guys on this, with Adam, Neil, Ben. And when they told me about their idea, I said, holy shit, that is it. That is exactly what we're looking for. When we're thinking about true businesses that can transform an entire industry by shifting over to a blockchain, they nailed it out of the park. And trust me, I had like a thorn in my side for digital advertising. I hated it. And these guys went, yeah, we hate it too. And this is how we're going to fix it. Which I was very, very skeptical. And it's been an awesome road of working with these guys behind the scenes as they really present a sound crypto model and utilization of the technology. And it comes down to that the only protocol that can really sustain digital advertising at scale and real-time bidding is something around Constellation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben, Neil, and Adam to talk about Alchemy Exchange and how they're going to transform the entire digital advertising industry. Maybe you guys want to give a brief introduction, talk about your background and how you kind of came into this whole picture.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the intro. That's very kind. And we're really chuffed to be here. There's been a lot of frantic pedaling. I guess you imagine a duck. We've been a lot of legwork. Look very serene on top, but paddling frantically underneath. And yeah, essentially the three of us have only ever worked in digital advertising. Between the three of us, we've got 30 years of experience at some pretty significant players. We've worked for big ad tech companies, big publishers, and really we've always spoken about just something not being quite right. The exchanges were broken, there was value being leaked all over any part of the chain you can imagine. And coupled with that, Facebook and Google came around quite quickly and just saw that opportunity and gazumped most people. And what you're seeing now is, we've probably all seen this a few times today, right? You log into a website, you get told that someone's dropping a cookie on you, you have no idea what it's for. And then you see that annoying pair of trainers that you never want to buy just follow you around forever. And it's the advertising market's actually coming to a bit of a crescendo. So you may have seen that iOS 14.5, which was the latest release, kind of made you aware in your phone for the first time that apps were tracking you. And we've seen straw polls, and largely people were saying, okay, we're turning that off now. And we've got the same thing happening with cookies. So Google Chrome, like the most widely used browser ever, as of 2022, cookies disappear. So we're going to be in a position where the cookie and the device ID, which has underpinned the advertising industry for 20 years, is going to disappear. And Neil, one of the co-founders and chief commercial officer, has worked for Mindshare for the best part of 5 years as the head of mobile, and we're really banging that drum. And it'd be good to kind of hear like what you were talking about at the time, because I've seen a number of Neil's presentations, and he was vociferous in his angst at what's going on in the marketplace.
Give a little background to you guys, because what really interested me and when I met you guys is that you each have worked for a different piece of the digital advertising and have an extensive background and multiple different perspectives, and all came together. If you guys could just like tee up some of that, your background, and just share like what that experience was like.
Neil, do you want to fire off, because I guess you're the demand side, and
yeah, and I'm also the old man of the group, I guess. So I spent the last 15 years, like Ben said, working predominantly on the demand side of advertising. So 13 of those 15 years have been in agencies, mobile technology companies, but buying advertising space on behalf of myriad clients, everyone from Unilever doing deodorants and food stuff through to Nike, American Express, Ford, et cetera. And one of my most recent stints, I spent 5 years as head of mobile and then head of digital innovation for the EMEA region for Mindshare, which is the world's second largest media agency. They invest about $22 billion a year on behalf of a range of clients. And my team, the innovation team, had responsibility for a 9-figure budget every year. And one of the things that we were always looking at doing in the innovation space was making sure that our money was spent more efficiently. There's something that we're going to all kind of expand on later called the ad tech tax, which basically says that half of an advertiser's money is gone before it even reaches the website or the property that the ad is supposed to be delivered on. And that's, hugely inefficient. And a lot of that goes on fraud. Fraud obviously has detrimental aspects when you're looking at crime and, et cetera. And one of the things that we were always looking at doing was implementing a blockchain solution. And the blockchain solutions, the legacy solutions, wouldn't really work. Too slow, too expensive. So we'll talk again about that later. But when Chorley introduced us to Constellation, we just had this huge intake of breath, because we were like, this is what we need. This is what we need to put the advertising industry on the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, in a sort of weird situation, we've all been each other's client in some respects. So some sort of kind of weird media Mexican standoff. But yeah, I mean, I've previously worked at Condé Nast, which is about as legacy as publishing gets. And the sort of working in that kind of company, I was working in programmatic. I was at the forefront of ad sales, like digitally for that company. And essentially, they didn't really know what they were doing. Like when I first started, at least, it was all kind of like, a side issue for them. And that's kind of how it is for publishers, really. I mean, they're not technology companies. They have to be kind of by now. But ultimately, the technology that they're using is somebody else's technology, right? So you're always going to be a rent taker at that point. And you're not really an owner of your own network. And I think that is kind of one of the largest problems that most publishers find, is that they just have to increase the ad density to make up for the money that they're losing, paying that ad tax that Neil was talking about, really. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of all saw what Constellation was doing and realized that, this is the first time that somebody's been able to make a network that is scalable in a way that the more transactions that happen, the more scalable it becomes. So yeah, that's something that really turned us all on to Constellation for this kind of solution. And the work that's been done kind of around Mobi and things like that as well. We work in an industry that already has standards attached to it. They already have like different protocols that they use to transact stuff in this way. So it kind of made a lot of sense to us. It's that just implementing that sort of thing would take 10 years normally, but it's already been done for us, and then we just need to bring the actual infrastructure to those guys to make it possible for them to actually use it in a sort of understandable way. So yeah.
And I think to kind of round off our origin stories, for my sins, I was one of the ad tech sales guys. So it's how I met Neil initially, it's how I met Chorley. And I would say I had a hard time sleeping, but there wasn't something great about what I was selling. I was selling crappy products to publishers, but that really allowed me to see the issues they were facing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've sold big software deals to global publishers. I've worked with CNN, I've worked with Vice, I've worked with Forbes, I've worked with Time Magazine, kind of any publisher you can imagine really. And they all have the same issue. It's we need more yield. And the solutions they've got right now, because as you say, Joy, they aren't tech companies, weren't right. And we saw what Constellation were doing. And then when Lattice dropped, I was like, holy shit, this is a programmatic ad exchange. And what do I know that has loads of transactions? Like programmatic ad exchange. And here we are 6 months later, kind of proud to show you what I've been working on. And the market really is significant. And pool of liquidity really is how we're thinking about it. This is a legacy centralized ecosystem. And if you look at what happened with DeFi over the last kind of 18 months or so, this ability to break out of these honeypots and put the computing towards the edge, and any individual can lend money to anyone, is like, that's how this is going to work. So we've been shown the way, and Constellation, the Hypergraph, is the first feasible technology that can allow this to address this massive new pool of liquidity. But the amazing part is, once it's addressed, it's then interoperable with everything, as is the beauty of the L0 standard. And this is Neil's baby, so I'm going to let Neil talk us through our market opportunity, but hopefully you can see it's pretty significant, and we're hugely excited.
There's a lot of different words. Let me just frame this for you guys. It's like this whole community, there's a lot of new verbiage going on. And I think this slide really captures how big of an opportunity, a completely different industry that they're trying to say, hey, what happened in DeFi can actually happen in the digital advertising. And there's a massive potential to take a dent.
Yeah, so I'm really grateful to the team that helped me out with this slide, because I've had proper OCD about getting these numbers right. I didn't want to be one of these guys that comes out with this massively unrealistic forecast for what we think we can do as a business. So really taken this kind of top down as well as a bottom up view about what we can do. And we're very lucky that we had this kind of element of serendipity when we realized that the profit and loss account that we had built for the first 2 years of the business took us to $50 million a year run rate. And then we looked at the size of the top 6 centralized advertising exchanges globally. It was 5 billion of those. That's how much those exchanges bring in a year. And so 50 million is stealing a 1% share of that market, which we think is hugely realistic given the power of this blockchain technology that we can bring to market. But a lot of players play in what's called the Lumascape, which is this picture of the tech stack that sits between an advertiser wanting to buy an ad and a publisher delivering it. And blockchain isn't just about the ad exchange delivering the auction to do it. There are other areas in that market that blockchain solves, like fraud verification, like bill reconciliation, et cetera, et cetera. And as we build bigger features into the Alchemy Exchange and roll it out with the buy side as well as the supply side, we can go into increasingly larger markets. So taking that 5 billion share of the 1% of the market, we're then looking at $98 billion. And that's how much is traded programmatically. Again, it's one of these industry buzzwords, but programmatically is the automated buying and selling of digital media. That's how much is traded programmatically, kind of outside of the centralized platform, like some of Google's inventory and some of Facebook's inventory. But then overall, the market that we really want to capture is $340 billion. And that's the size of the total digital advertising market. Again, outside of some of Google and Facebook's core inventory. And that market is growing really rapidly. It grew 17% year on year in 2020. We're looking at seeing it grow even bigger as we come out of COVID and brands, open up their budgets a little bit more and run more activity. So that total addressable market is only going to grow for us.
Sweet. Those are impressive numbers, guys. And I really like, you've mentioned the hypergraph and the technology stack and blockchain as a solution to your problems. And you kind of touched it shortly when you guys introduced yourself on your different roles, saying basically, you represent the different aspects of an industry like a Mexican standoff. And I find that quite an interesting constellation, how you guys are set up. Maybe can you give our audience a little bit of a better insight of what the actual problems are within the ad industry? Because right now I understand we use blockchain technology that is more scalable, that has more throughput, blah to speed up and to create more efficiencies within the ad market, and that's a huge market with all the trajectory that's going on in the world right now. But what are these different angle points that really make this a value proposition? Because there are solutions out there like the NYSEG or Exchange, and there are other people who have been trying on Ad Exchange. So what are the different viewpoints you guys are leveraging to make this different from other attempts of the past?
I think the main one for me, and the obvious one, is real-time bidding, right? So it has to happen in real time. And if Bitcoin is 40 minutes for a transaction, that's not going to play. Someone's left a website 39 minutes ago. Ethereum, slightly faster, but too expensive. The digital ads are traded in blocks of 1,000. So if you are paying $15 in gas fees for a transaction times 1,000 for an impression that's worth, for 1,000 impressions worth $1.50 to an advertiser, it's a non-starter from the get-go. So the ability to transact instantly, fearlessly, just meant this was the first time that really this is a solution that can now work for the advertising industry. And as much as I'd like to say we're the first people to think we can put the whole advertising industry on a blockchain, the IAB, which is the Internet Advertising Bureau, the governing body that kind of makes sure that people are playing as they should be within the space, had a task force put together to explore blockchain solutions. And the main takeaway they had from that report that we kind of have as our North Star was that the blockchain needs to make significant improvements in its speed to be a reasonable solution to replace what we currently have that exists. And the blockchain itself is perfect for advertising. You immediately can see who bought your ad, which website it was delivered on, which is not easy at the moment. Centralized exchanges will not give you log level data because they say it's too expensive. But what we really believe is happening, and you can see this if you do the maths. So if you say an advertiser has $1, the publisher ends up seeing 49 cents. There's 15% that's just lost to the ether. And if we go back to the numbers that we're looking on that previous slide, and particularly 340 billion, 15% of 340 billion is not an insignificant amount of money. And when you're seeing publishers struggling for revenue and having to lay off staff, I just left a position where I worked for News Corp, and we went through a round of redundancies because there was not enough money being made from advertising. So there are real issues that are affecting real people that we feel really strongly that we can address. And the coolest part, I think, again, we had another one of these amazing penny drop moments where we were listening to Diggles talk about all of the amazing work he'd done with Moby and authoring a standard. And my head turned on. There's a standard that exists in advertising, which is ubiquitous, and everyone uses it to trade ads, and that's open real-time bidding 2.5. So imagine the work on that standard that was authored for Moby is 7 years old, and everyone uses it. And all of a sudden now we can take the technology it was crying out for, deliver it to that standard. So when we go to market and speak to our future advertising clients, our future publishing clients, everything's the same. Nothing has changed. We're completely interoperable with what you have, except we now provide you with value. We provide you with an immutable record of all the transactions. You get instant reconciliation of all of who owes what to whom. And Neil will testament to this. At Mindshare, a week of every month is set aside for reconciliation, which again, rolled out over a year's 12 weeks is a significant amount of time spent matching spreadsheet to spreadsheet. It's not an issue now with the Alchemy exchange, and the average fee for a user on a centralized exchange is 15%. We're going to go to market with a 1.5% fee for a buyer and a 1.5% fee for a seller. With parity in terms of product, it's going to be a no-brainer for these guys to move on to the solution that was hailed in 2018 as a solution that was required. And now it's a bit more pertinent because cookies disappearing, which have underpinned the entire digital ad inventory for the last 20 years. So we don't really believe that the solution is ID. The solution is yield. And the industry's taken a too myopic approach. It's too close to what they're used to. And we say, no, if we can give you more yield back, forget the IDs now. You can kind of target contextually, or if there's a decentralized ID solution that comes in at the edge, reward users for accepting that they have to be sold ads that are targeted to them, and just reestablish the intended value exchange on the internet, right? Where you, the user, go to your favorite website to read the content that you like. In exchange for that, you see some targeted ads, but not too many to ruin the experience. And that, as you'll all experience a number of times today, is not the case anymore. Page loads slowly, an ad pops up that you don't want to, you get redirected to a site that you don't want to either, and just you install an ad blocker, which again compounds the issue for publishers, which really a kind of independent journalism is key, right, to our society, right? You have to have the real story with the real news from when it happens. So yeah, there's a huge number of issues that we're hugely excited about. And yeah, hopefully you can hear it from us. Like we're ready to go, right? I'm super passionate. I'm so excited about what we've got.
Yeah, I think just to sort of go back to that Mexican standoff analogy, like we were each other's clients, but ultimately, like, it's only a case of like, I win if you lose currently. And that's the problem. You know, ultimately Google and Facebook are taking everyone's lunch, right? And like, we're all left to sort of fight for the scraps. So ultimately, if, you know, we can work in a trustless way using something like blockchain, then that's going to completely change that dynamic. And therefore, you know, it's only like you win if I win sort of situation, which we think is really going to change the game.
I think one final really interesting point, and I touched on it earlier, is that ad fraud is not an inconsequential industry, right? It is the second biggest contributor globally to organized crime, following narcotics trade. And it's set within the next 5 years. They're saying it's going to eclipse the narcotics trade as the biggest funder of organized crime. So if we can, in our own small way, hopefully big way, implement a solution that cuts that out as well, then we're doing the world a great service.
But what about the consumers? So what about the people that see ads? How does that impact them? What are your plans on kind of rolling that out to give back to the people that visit sites and that are exposed to advertising?
I think there's a growing awareness, and largely, if you haven't watched it, I recommend watching it, but The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which was a real deep dive into what Facebook are doing and what their data really means. And we've all experienced it, right? You say something and then all of a sudden what you've just spoken about to your friend appears in your Instagram feed. And people are now starting to realize that and come around to this idea that if you aren't paying for a product like Facebook or Instagram, then you are the product. And I know, and we've just shown you how much you're worth as an individual. So we've already been having conversations with some pretty exciting partners that are looking at decentralized ID solutions whereby you can get rewarded as a user for visiting a website and allowing your data to be shared with advertisers. So we move away from trying to guess who you are to kind of tracking where you've been on the last 30 days. Okay, I now as a user understand that I need to be shown ads because the publisher has to pay to produce content, but I'm going to be involved in that value exchange now and be rewarded for making my information available to be targeted relevant ads, which, I mean, is not that bad. I don't think half the time. Like, advertising little and often is perfect. That's exactly how it works. But when it's here and here and here, it's just kind of a bit too much, right? It just ruins the reason you came to that website in the first place. So re-establishing user experience and rewarding people for kind of buying into this idea of like, if you win, we all win, and we need to kind of maintain the internet as it is right now.
So basically, to give everybody like a frame of reference, is you have what the Brave browser has been trying to do.
Yeah.
And now you're expanding this throughout every domain out there.
Exactly that. The Brave project's great. I think they've gone to a B2C approach, right? Like it takes a lot of money to get someone to switch a browser. And then it takes a lot of convincing to get a publisher to enable an ad unit to then get rewarded in a cryptocurrency. It's honestly inspired by the Constellation team. We've looked at this one-to-many approach, and we kind of view ourselves as a B2B2C company, whereby we sell to businesses, but we allow then that to capture many individuals and make a significant impact from the top 100 websites in the world, let's say. Like that, they are the drivers of the share of knowledge on the internet and can make a significant impact if we help them to sharpen everything up.
I think
something. Something like the Brave browser, for example, is a great idea. That is Chrome. That is the alternative to Chrome, right? But the sort of problem as an advertising solution is that it is a silo. It's another silo in an already existing landscape full of silos, right? That's the problem that we've got at the moment. And in the same way that we want to create kind of liquidity with the industry, we also want to create that with data. And ultimately, something like the Brave browser and all these other solutions, they just create more problems than they solve ultimately. And it's just like another ad network. So, if you're an advertiser and you want to work with Brave to reward users, you have to go to them. It's not like you can go to the publishers that you normally work with. So it's not really it doesn't slip straight into the current framework. And I think that's the interoperability is something that we're really keen to address, I think.
And to twist the knife on them a little bit further, with my ex-agency hat on, right? You're coming to me trying to sell me advertising space. And what we plan against is a metric of reach and engagement. And if you don't have the scalable audience for me to have the reach against my audience, then I'm not going to give you my money. So this is why this idea of hosting the exchange in an environment where there is big reach, multiple browsers, et cetera, where it really cuts through and it will gain momentum with the big agency holding groups.
So I think one of the major takeaways on all this is that Alchemy is not trying to switch people's existing behavior, especially in an industry that's already buying $340 billion worth of digital ads. They're literally saying, hey, we're going to save you time, money, and effectiveness by using a scalable blockchain, and thus delivering better ads, less fraud, and ultimately rewarding to customers.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what I see is also, you basically answered it implicitly by focusing, instead of that ID aspect of tracking and tracing, into that aspect of revenue or savings, right? So if you undercut that delta of 15 to whatever X%, you have an immediate go-to-market opportunity that exists here, which is kind of like a self-propelling value proposition, which is, in a sense of a business, the best case scenario how you want to do a business. But I want to get to two more questions and that emerged from what you're saying. And the first was you mentioned basically the user experience and how people are cluttered on the one hand, but then they're also tracked in a kind of creepily way. And then we have that whole topic of digital propaganda and news feeds and customized advertisement that basically steers public opinion maybe kind of away from what people really need or want, and kind of shaping the social landscape and the reality factually we end up living in. So I heard a little bit of a thread that I want to pull out there. Is there anything in your solution that would imply that by making your stuff sorry for saying stuff, for your solution more efficient and more traceable and all these things, is there anything in there that could improve our social fabric by guiding advertising back to the path that we were used 20 years ago?
I think so, for sure. I will talk for hours about this if anyone wants to, but the publishers are beholden to different laws to Facebook and any platform really, where if they lie explicitly, they're going to get a legal case comes through their letterbox, right? That doesn't happen on Facebook. People on Facebook sometimes think the earth's flat, right? And instead of that being kicked, you end up in these echo chambers. And what we're seeing is that because Facebook and Google took so many eyeballs away from publishers, publishers had no choice but to follow where their users went, and their users were getting further and further apart. So the publishers got further and further apart. So like people weren't agreeing on anything anymore. There was no kind of middle ground for like any kind of discourse to happen. So we really think that by taking some of that sentiment back, you put knowledge in a space where it's not being bought and sold. You're not being force-fed stuff that they think you like that no one's done any research on what these algorithms are really doing to the way we think, right? No one's done any research on what it means to communicate with people in 140 characters. Like it's a pretty like powerful thing. I'm believing in the law of unintended consequences, and I think you can see those playing out every day, right? In any walk of life, it's something that needs to be done. And we think that if you put more yield back in the hand of these publishers, rather than there be people managing contracts from umpteen partners and implementing those partners on page and troubleshooting those partners on page, this returned money to the publisher can be used to improve user experience on site, create more beautiful ad campaigns. And as you mentioned, Matthias, bring us back to that magazine experience where you have beautiful ads in a glossy kind of amazing experience online. And I mean, surely at Condé Nast, you can speak to this, that they were the originators of kind of the beautiful glossy magazine, and people still buy them. People still love GQ. People still love Vogue, right? The proof is in the pudding still. We can still see that proof. And we've kind of been taken off of a course, and we really want to bring back.
Yeah, I think it's that clickbait thing, right? Isn't it? We've all been a sucker to some like piece of clickbait article. And we've all been there, and that is kind of what's driven a lot of articles and headlines and stuff like that. And that's kind of how you get pushed into these polls, right? It's just like, all I need is someone to land on my site. It's like the equivalent of like gross domestic product, right? If all you want is like a high number of users, that means that like what you're gonna like get is do whatever you can to get them. And if it means writing a headline that's not true and like is kind of slightly false, even just to like draw a user in, even if the article says something completely different, you'll do it because ultimately it brings more money into the coffers. And that's been a problem for not even just the last 5-10 years, even though the sort of like what's happening now is playing out from that. That's why you get people storming the Capitol, all that kind of thing, because they've been pushed into these polls just as ads, and that's it. That's basically why this has happened. So we hope that like by being able to sort of make publishers show less ads, almost like by giving them a better value exchange, that means that they're not going to write these ridiculous articles that cause people to do ridiculous things, right?
So guys, I love all this. This is awesome. And you guys just know a ton about this industry. So you're going to be able to answer every question that people have. It's what's impressed me so much. Let's talk about why this matters to the DAG community. And how this affects everybody here. This is kind of what everybody's been waiting for. Is like, one of the fun things about this is that we're doing something very revolutionary in your fundraising process. I'm going to let you guys open the kimono and talk about this. Like, this to me is one of the revolutionary things that tie in generative economics, and everybody's like, what is all that? What does that mean? Well, it starts in your fundraising process. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that and what that looks like for people that are interested in backing you, or not, but are interested in how DAG plays a role in this.
Yeah, so I think from our point of view, when we look at the industry that we work in, right, it's like dominated by these two companies, sorry, and that's because they have the infrastructure, and that means that they have the resources. And essentially what we are trying to do by using a blockchain and by using DeFi as a sort of example is we want to redistribute those resources. Those resources should not be held by one company and then everybody else has to pay a fee to use it. They should be completely distributed. And the only way to do that really is by a DeFi sort of solution where resources can be reallocated because rewards are attached to it essentially. People will only do good things if you reward them, right? We know that from blockchain generally. So the only way to really make sure that everybody is an honest actor in that sort of situation is for everybody to be rewarded. So that's what we're aiming to do. And the sort of back end piece of what we're doing is the bit that sort of really benefits the Constellation community, right? So the whole part of it that we're hoping to do is like open up that kind of massively liquid market and bring it onto a blockchain. And we want to, spread that 64% that's being stolen by Google. Obviously, it's not going to be that much because we're trying to make things, fairer. But that's essentially what we're trying to do. That 1.5% that we're taking from either side, like we want to redistribute it to the people who help us, like redistribute the resources, whether that's bandwidth or whether that's liquidity. Either way, we want to make sure that everybody in that is getting the value that they deserve for being part of that value exchange.
So I understood a key word in there, or two keywords, which is DeFi, the DeFi example of creating a liquidity pool, which is essentially what you're saying. And how does that tie into your fundraising efforts? What is the thing that we in collaboration have been come up together to pre-fund that?
So what we're really excited to announce is that we want to, and we will, you're going to be able to get into the public sale using your DAG, and you will be able to immediately stake that DAG and be rewarded in ads tokens. So kind of giving a preview of what in Q3 with stake channels proper, what's going to happen when you stake your DAG towards a certain product. And we think that the best way to get people excited, and we fundamentally believe this is the best community in crypto, that why not give you a chance to put your DAG to work for you and realize the future of what businesses are going to look like.
So if I understand that correctly, so you're building a liquidity pool in order to support and run your business later on, right? And what you're doing is you're giving people the opportunity, if they come into the pre-sale, for example, they need to stake DAG in order to participate in an equal amount in your fundraise, which means essentially you're pre-funding your liquidity pool already with the fundraise. Instead of waiting like many other projects out there, they do their fundraise, stage 1, then they list on Uniswap, stage 2, and then they have some reward APY program at this stage or at the later stage. So it's kind of like a cumbersome process. What you guys are doing is you're really breaking that entire paradigm open, and you go like, no, we want to make sure that the people who align with us now are the people who are going to align with us a couple of months down the road when the product goes live. So why not merge the funding of the liquidity pool with the fundraising itself, which means for the people that go with you, there's a long-term incentive because they'd be able to earn some APY, if I understand that correctly, the minute they come into your fundraise, which creates a more long-term incentive versus spreading it out multiple steps with different incentive profiles along the way, so to speak. Is that correct?
Exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, so we want to kind of establish what's going to come in the future today, and we want to make sure that we take everyone with us, right? So if the people who are supplying that bandwidth and supplying the liquidity are going to be such a crucial part of our network, like we can start doing that today, right? They're the first people in, they should be rewarded first, not waiting until later when the product's launched, and we start, getting publishers and agencies and all that kind of stuff on board. So, and it will help people kind of get the mindset of how we're thinking about this. This is, there's essentially all this liquidity and all this bandwidth that we need to gather. So we may as well do it early doors and make sure that, we have a solid basis before we go to publishers and agencies, because we're only going to get one shot at that. So the network needs to be bulletproof before that. And the way that we're going to do that is by rewarding people for, staking their ads tokens, their DAG, so the bandwidth and the liquidity that we need to actually build the product later on.
Amazing.
I think this is a fascinating shift that we start to see, that a lot of our intention in building out L0 tokens and attaching business logic to an L0 token means, hey, if you're going to build an L0 token or project on Constellation, you need to supply liquidity and you need to attract that. And what Alchemy is doing right now is creating really the attractiveness between node operators, DAG holders, to say, hey, we have a viable business opportunity. This is our rewards model. This is how we're going to scale. This is how we're going to produce revenue, those traditional things that we don't ever talk about in crypto, and put it all together and do that work up front versus figuring it out later. And this is our idea to programmatically implement this at when people are starting to build an L0 token on the Hypercube. Alchemy is doing this up front now to show how generative economics or tokenomics work. And it's on them. With the amazing part here is that this is not just an ERC20 token that they're printing to fundraise and do a press release on tokenization. It actually connects to the native chain here, and it's on the onus is on this group and this company to prove that they are a viable business, and they owe it to the community and the backers in perpetuity to maintain that attractiveness, or else that liquidity moves around the network. So it's a pretty monumental thing that really holds every stakeholder accountable: your backers, the company, everybody that trades. Absolutely fascinating to see it really come together here. I really love how much work that you guys have gone through to make this vision a reality. I mean, it's one thing to go, hey, we want to shift all of digital advertising onto a blockchain. The next is to actually create a viable economy around the token. And those are really, really tough achievements. And you guys have spent, the better part of a year figuring that out, working with our team so that this is a possibility. And yes, by the way, have you already queued up a lot of publishers and advertisers to use this? Yeah, this is a big move for you guys. And I'm also super impressed. I know, I always got to button my mouth a little bit, but these guys have amazing advisors in the works from the entire industry that are going, this is a real problem. This is something that needs to be addressed. And I think you guys are the guys to do it. So I'm pretty excited about this. In the next couple of minutes, guys, advertising on blockchain has failed in 2017, 2018. Quickly go over kind of why that is and why you guys are going to succeed. This is your last 2 minutes. Leave everybody kind of getting amped and ready to go.
The current system allowed too many loopholes for people to exploit, really. And publishers as legacy businesses were too slow to close them up. And advertisers were at the behest of the partners that sat in between. So what we're really going to do is provide a new ecosystem where everyone is rewarded, where there is immutability of data, there's instant reconciliation, there's some amazing features that we're talking about building out that really just provide the solution that they're used to in a much newer, better, more efficient way that's going to allow them to continue operating as profitable businesses in the future. And we can continue to visit the sites we love ad infinitum.
And in terms of the blockchain failing for advertising, it really is. It's that idea of lack of speed of the chain and those gas fees that just make it not fit for purpose in a high speed, low margin industry.
Yeah, and scalability is the other thing as well. If you think about the way traditional blockchains work, it's building on top of each other. But the hypergraph actually allows us to get more scale the bigger the network becomes. And in digital advertising, there's always ups and down times. So the ability to be able to scale and kind of descale as well, and sell those resources back to the network is going to be absolutely invaluable.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. I am super excited about this. I mean, obviously it shows you've turned my perspective of advertising going, man, I really want to disrupt this industry and revolutionize it. And I know those are words used so commonly, but for me, I get to be bullish about a project other than what we're building at Constellation, and see industry experts come to us and go, hey, we know a lot about this industry. We know the business dynamics. This is what we're going to do. And by the way, we need your technical support. We need your community to come in. So this is a really exciting piece. How does everybody find you guys? Where are you? Who's, I'll really quick, I'll kind of tee up. One of their community managers and admins is Viking from our community. This has really set the stage on how we want our community to find new projects that are building on us. And to migrate to these companies like Alchemy. And and show them the way of building a solid community, support them, build momentum. And it's exciting to see this organically happen with Alchemy, as well as several other projects that are happening. So guys, how does everybody find you? What are next steps?
We are on Telegram. We have a website. We are going to, and it's a big moment for us, release our white paper, which we're hugely excited about. And then, yeah, we're going to be in the Telegram channel after this. We're going to field some questions if any of you guys have any. So we'll kind of be there. And then really for us, the next 8 weeks, we are going to just be nonstop with what we're working on, who we're speaking to, the people we're bringing into the fold. But yeah, Viking is going to take care, I think, in the chat of sharing where we need to go. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you in our Telegram channel predominantly. And yeah, more the merrier, I say.
Well, thanks, guys. One more thing, before we go is we've got a lot of coming down the road. Alchemy is going through this path. Lattice Launchpad's coming out in early June. We've got open submissions for people to submit their projects to Lattice Exchange and Lattice Launchpad. We started governance. Things are heating up, and you're going to see a lot come out of the Alchemy group here. These guys are getting started, but in so many ways, they've already figured out the next several years of their roadmap. So I can't thank you all enough for coming. You guys, any other parting words? Matthias, am I missing anything?
No.
All right. I love this community. I love seeing these projects come to light. We've seen 40 some submissions in a week. Alchemy was one of them. This is the type of quality that we're bringing into the fold. These are the type of submissions that we're seeing. And it truly warms my heart to see like the intention that people are bringing into their project submissions. It's not just about cybersecurity. It's not just about data validation. It's about taking any business that has an exchange of data in the digital ecosystem and bringing it onto a blockchain. And this is a really big market. So
I think there was a great philosopher, Conor McGregor, who I think once said that we aren't here to take part, we're here to take over. And I think that's exactly what we want to do with the digital ad world. So, yeah.
You mean the MMA fighter?
I was going to say props to Iris in the Telegram group, who spotted that it was going to be an ad exchange yesterday.
Yeah.
That was the first direct shout.
Love it. I love it. All right, guys. I really enjoyed this Hypergraph hour, and there's a lot coming out with you guys. So let's keep it going, and we'll bring you back in here to give an update. All right.
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
it's been
great.
Sure.
Can't wait to be back on as well. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.